3 subduction zones fired in one 24-hour window: Nias, Indonesia, the Kermadec Trench, the Kuril Islands, all on April 18th. 2 of those zones have produced some of the largest earthquakes in recorded history. Here's what USGS and BMKG detected, and what comes next. These weren't random background tremors. Subduction zones are where one tectonic plate dives beneath another. That pressure builds for decades, sometimes centuries. Then it snaps. The Nias earthquake struck at just 18 kilometers deep. That's extremely shallow for a subduction zone event. Shallow quakes hit harder on the surface. BMKG, Indonesia's National Geophysics Agency, confirmed the M5.7 hit at 3:06 in the morning local time. Residents near Lahawa reported strong shaking. Thousands of miles away, the Kermadec Trench ruptured at just 11 kilometers depth, barely below the ocean floor. And the Kuril Islands quake arrived first, at 35 kilometers deep, inside the same volcanic arc, where a magnitude 8.8 earthquake struck just 9 months ago. USGS data shows all 3 events occurred within 20 hours of each other. The question is this a pattern or a coincidence? Let's start where the day began. The Kuril Islands. 12:28 a.m. UTC, April 18th. The Pacific Plate lurched beneath the Okhotsk microplate. A magnitude 5.0 earthquake hit at 35 kilometers depth. The Kuril Islands stretch 1,300 kilometers, from Japan's Hokkaido Island all the way to Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. This is one of the most seismically violent strips of ocean floor on Earth. USGS records show this arc has produced 133 magnitude 7 or larger earthquakes since 1900. 12 of those were magnitude 8 or bigger. And just 9 months ago, on July 29, 2025, a magnitude 8.8 earthquake struck offshore Kamchatka. USGS confirmed it was the 6th largest earthquake ever recorded by modern instruments. The fault slipped up to 30 feet during that rupture. The rupture zone was 390 kilometers long and 140 kilometers wide. It triggered Pacific-wide tsunami watches and warnings from California to Japan. The April 18th M5.0 sits right inside that same arc. USGS's aftershock forecast, issued after the M8.8, gave greater than 99% probability of continued magnitude 5 or larger events for months. That forecast is still playing out. But here's where it gets strange. Less than 20 hours after the Kuril quake, 2 more subduction zones fired, on the opposite side of the Pacific. At 6:29 p.m. UTC, the Kermadec Trench ruptured. The Kermadec is one of the deepest ocean trenches on Earth, plunging to nearly 10 kilometers below sea level. The Pacific Plate is being consumed here at 60 to 90 millimeters per year. That's roughly how fast your fingernails grow. But that motion never stops. Pressure accumulates for centuries before it releases. The April 18th M5.4 struck at just 11 kilometers, extremely shallow. Shallow Kermadec events have tsunami-generating potential. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center assessed this event. No tsunami threat was issued for this magnitude, but the depth made it worth watching. Then, 97 minutes after the Kermadec quake, the 3rd zone fired. 8:06 p.m. UTC, magnitude 5.7, near Lahawa, North Nias, Indonesia. Depth, 18 kilometers. BMKG confirmed strong shaking across the Nias region. This is the same fault system that produced the most deadly natural disaster of the 21st century. On December 26, 2004, this fault, the Sunda megathrust, ruptured for 1,200 kilometers. The resulting magnitude 9.1 earthquake generated waves that killed approximately 230,000 people across 14 countries. 2 months later, March 28, 2005, it ruptured again near Nias Island. That M8.6 event caused the fault to slip more than 11 meters beneath the ocean floor. Islands rose by 3 meters in minutes. The April 18th M5.7 is far smaller than either of those events, but it fired from the same locked plate boundary, the same system still building strain today. And that wasn't even the only Kermadec event on April 18th. Earlier in the day, a separate M5.9 had also struck south of the Kermadec Islands. 3 zones, 1 day, all subduction. These earthquakes happened far from the continental United States, but they are not irrelevant to you. Every subduction zone on the Pacific Ring of Fire connects to the same tsunami-generating system. A large enough rupture at the Kermadec Trench sends wave energy northeast, toward Hawaii, then toward the U.S. West Coast. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Honolulu monitors all of these zones in real time. It's the same system that would alert Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle of an incoming wave. The Cascadia subduction zone runs directly beneath Seattle, Portland, and the Oregon coast. It is geologically similar to the Sunda megathrust near Nias. USGS hazard assessments have confirmed Cascadia is capable of a magnitude 8 to 9 earthquake. When that rupture happens, parts of the Oregon coast could see waves within 15 to 30 minutes, before emergency alerts could reach some communities. The Kuril Islands earthquakes matter to Alaska for the same reason. The same Pacific plate pushing beneath the Kuril Arc also drives beneath the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Chain. The 1952 M5.0 Kuril earthquake generated a tsunami with waves up to 12 meters high along Kamchatka's coast and sent energy across the Pacific toward Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast. Right now, the 3 April 18th events are not producing direct threats to North American coastlines. USGS confirmed no significant damage from any of the 3 locations. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued no warnings, but the activity level on 3 major subduction zones inside 1 calendar day is exactly what seismologists document and track. Here's why a 24-hour cluster on 3 separate arcs matters. All 3 events happened on convergent plate boundaries, where ocean crust is being driven downward into the mantle. These are the most dangerous fault systems on Earth, not because of magnitude 5 earthquakes, but because of what magnitude 5 earthquakes sometimes precede. In the 10 days before the M8.8 Kamchatka struck in July 2025, USGS confirmed 50 magnitude 5 or larger earthquakes hit the Kuril Kamchatka region, including a magnitude 7.4 just 9 days before the main event. The Kuril M5.0 on April 18th falls inside that same zone. The Kermadec region had an unusually active April even beyond the M5.4. This week, the zone recorded a M6.0 south of the Kermadec Islands. This month, a M7.5 struck near Tonga, just 700 kilometers up the same plate boundary from the Kermadec zone. USGS and New Zealand's GNS Science both track this boundary continuously. Some researchers also study what's called stress transfer, the idea that a major rupture on one section of a plate boundary shifts stress to adjacent segments. It is not a proven triggering mechanism for events this far apart, but scientists at institutions like Caltech and GNS Science actively investigate it. Here's what is established fact. The Pacific plate is moving. It is being consumed at subduction zones across the entire ring of fire simultaneously. The Nias section of the Sunda megathrust has a documented historical cycle. USGS-affiliated research published in Science confirms that similar-scale ruptures struck the Nias-Simulu section in 1861 and again in 2005, roughly 140 years apart. Before that, coral microatolls show evidence of another comparable event around 1422. The 2005 rupture reset the clock for that specific patch, but other sections of the broader Sunda megathrust, particularly segments to the south toward the Mentawai Islands, remain locked and strain-loaded, according to researchers studying interseismic deformation. 3 zones, 3 separate plates, 1 day. When that happens on fault systems responsible for some of the deadliest events in history, it gets documented. So what should you watch in the next 72 hours? 3 things. First, the Kuril Arc. The M8.8 aftershock sequence is not finished. USGS's published forecast gives a 24% probability of a magnitude 7 or larger aftershock from that sequence. A magnitude 7 in the Kuril zone at shallow depth triggers immediate tsunami assessment for Alaska, Hawaii, and the U.S. West Coast. Any M6 or larger from this arc in the next 72 hours warrants close attention. Monitor the USGS earthquake feed at earthquake.usgs.gov. It updates in real time. Second, the Kermadec zone. April has already delivered a M7.5 near Tonga, a M6.0 south of the Kermadec Islands, and now 2 M5+ events on a single day, including the M5.9 and the M5.4 on April 18th. If a M6.5 or larger fires here at shallow depth, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center will run a full tsunami assessment. Hawaii faces the most direct exposure from a Kermadec event. Waves from this zone cross the Pacific in several hours. Third, the Nias region and the broader Sunda megathrust. The M5.7 was shallow, 18 kilometers. Indonesia's disaster management agency, BNPB, continues monitoring the region for any aftershock escalation. If a M6 or larger follows near La Hewa in the next 48 hours, local tsunami risk for North Sumatra's coastline would be reassessed. Now, the scenarios. Best case. These three events are independent activity on normally active zones. The sequences quiet down over the next 2 weeks. No further escalation on any of the three arcs. This is the most statistically likely outcome, based on historical baseline activity. Watch case. The Kuril zone produces a M6.5 to M7 within the next 30 days. This would be consistent with USGS's published probability range for continued aftershock activity from the M8.8. A M7 at shallow depth on the Kuril arc requires full Pacific tsunami response protocols. Worst case, clearly labeled as worst case. A shallow M8 or larger rupture on an unruptured section of the Sunda megathrust. Research teams studying interseismic coupling along the Sunda megathrust have identified segments south of the 2004-2005 rupture zones as capable of large events. USGS carries no specific warning for this outcome right now, but it sits within the official hazard envelope for this region. 3 things to remember. 1. On April 18, 2026, 3 separate subduction zones, Nias, the Kermadec Trench, and the Kuril Islands, all fired within 20 hours of each other. 2. The Kuril zone is still inside the active aftershock sequence of the 6th largest earthquake ever recorded, the M8.8 Kamchatka from July 2025. That sequence is not finished. 3. The Sunda megathrust near Nias is the same fault system that ruptured in 2004 and killed 230,000 people. It is still moving. It is still accumulating strain on adjacent segments. None of April 18th's events required emergency action. But subduction zones don't announce when they're done. If you want to stay ahead of what's happening to Earth's plate boundaries in real time, subscribe. I post every time something like this breaks. Coming next, the Cascadia subduction zone, the fault that runs directly beneath Seattle, Portland, and the Oregon coast. Scientists have confirmed it's overdue. The damage model for the Pacific Northwest is unlike anything in modern American history. That video is on the screen right now. Stay safe.